who don't know, we're going to do something on relationships, and I'm really excited about this one. There was a study that was done at the University of North Carolina trying to determine what is the impact on your health when you feel lonely. What does loneliness do to your physical health? And the results were actually a little disturbing. They discovered in this research study they were doing that it vastly elevates, sustained loneliness vastly elevates a person's risk of things like heart disease, stroke, and cancer. There's a direct link between loneliness and serious physical health consequences. As a matter of fact, in their study, they discovered that a lack of friends or family is as dangerous to your health as diabetes in old age. But they also discovered the other side is true. Conversely, people who have support of loved ones are less likely to develop health conditions. Did you know that? They're more likely to have a longer life expectancy. And the good thing about it is it's not about how many friends you have. It's not about quantity. It's about quality. You don't have to have 50 friends. You just have to have a few. And it automatically has this tremendous health impact. Now, obviously, the theological implications for us are pretty clear. God created us to do better in life when we're connected with people who love us that we love. That's the obvious theological, because our bodies run better when we do that. So if you want to have the life that God has created for you, you've got to build the right kind of friendships into your life, because they will even make a difference on how you physically feel and the health that you experience in this world. So that's the obvious theological impact. The problem with this, of course, is that people are jerks. I mean, people are just jerks. I mean, there isn't a person listening to me that doesn't have a story. Not one. You all have stories. If I were to say, tell me about a time when you were really hurt, maybe by someone that you loved or trusted. You're all going to tell me stories. I don't know a human that doesn't have a story. I mean, I certainly have stories from my life. My family tree has stories. I don't know, I think I told one time that my great-grandpa on my mom's side was just an evil human being. To give you an example, he was a violent alcoholic. He was all forms of abusive. All forms. And my grandma, my mom's mom, was raised in this, and my mom had to live in it until the man passed away. One time she said she was in her grandma's house, and her grandma was a saint. Unfortunately, isn't that how it usually goes? She was married to this monster, and my mom was playing the piano in the house, and he walked in. He walked over, he was a big man. He picked her up and said, if you ever play the piano when I'm in the house again, I'll kill you. See, what we really need in life are people. We need more people. And some of you are like, I don't want any more people. Because it seems like a catch-22. It's like I skipped that verse. It's not good for man to be alone. Yeah, I do this often. We were created to be in relationship. God made us, so the only way we really work is when we're with other people. The problem is loving people is like loving a porcupine, right? It's like, they're going to hurt me. I keep getting hurt. And you say that the future, my best life is going to happen with more relationships. I really don't want to love any more porcupines. And some of you have been so hurt by people that you've become scared. And now what you do in your life is you build walls. You don't build relationships. You keep yourself protected behind these walls, but you're not building relationships. And what you're really doing is damaging yourself. And I get it. It's a protection thing. Since so many of you had so many negative experiences with people, you can intellectually sit here and go, yep, I know I need people. Here's the problem. People really hurt me. So what's the solution to all this? Well, that's what we're going to start the series on. We're going to spend weeks talking about relationship skills that can transform your life. And we're going to start with this really important thing, because this is kind of the foundation for the whole thing. You've got to learn and understand today how to tap into the power of relationships. So I want to ask you to grab your notes. If you didn't get them, they're right on the back table. You're welcome to grab some right now, grab a pen. There will be some really important things to fill out as we go through this today. Also, for those of you who want to watch this again, if you go on YouTube and just search for my name, These videos are always uploaded, usually within 24 hours, so you can watch it again, or maybe you have a friend that really is going to need this information today. you can have access to it. And we think we figured out a way to link the notes. So thanks to Matt right here. Way to go, Matt. So this is all coming along. So let's jump right into this super important topic. The first thing is you have to really internalize this. You have to understand that your best life is going to happen with connection. This is what you have to get to. You have to really internalize the truth of this statement. You have to get it. My best life is going to happen with these type of connections. Now, I want you to know that there are a lot of people sounding warnings about the future of our society because they understand the statement is true and they're watching what's happening with the youngest generation and they're getting really, really worried. So let me give you an example of what they're seeing. Many of you have seen this. Probably all of you have seen it. Okay, probably about 3 months ago, I went out to eat with one of my daughters, and we were sitting in the restaurant and just enjoying ourselves. And then they looked like late teenagers, all came in a group and were seated right next to us at this table. The first thing they all did, is they took out their smartphones. And they literally sat head down on their phone. The only time they stopped to look up and say anything was to place their order with the waitress, and then immediately heads went back down on their phones. I'm not kidding. I never heard a single word spoken to each other the entire time till their food came. Then their food came, 4 of them put their phone down. The other 2 stayed on and ate one-handed while on their phone the whole time. No dialogue, no real conversation, and I'm sitting there watching this going, why'd you even go out to eat together? I mean, you said, yeah, I went out with all my friends. No, you didn't. You went out with your smartphone. And you happen to sit by people you know. And there's so much being written about this that what we're so concerned about is that the most important thing, the thing that will make your life the best life is the ability to build healthy relationships, and there's so much being written about what's happening. Does this generation even know how to build any kind of real relationships? And as relationships fall apart, society falls apart. Is society getting better? Not too many people believe that it is, and so much is linked directly to this. And your best life, your future, is rooted in your ability to make connections. So let me define what connections really means. And this is so important. I put it on your notes, but I also put it up here. In the simplest terms, a real connection is one in which you can be your whole self, the real authentic you, a relationship to which you can bring your heart and mind and soul and passion. So specifically what it means is this. Both parties to the relationship are wholly present. You are known, understood, and mutually invested in each other. And in this sentence is my favorite. What each truly thinks and feels and believes and fears and needs can be shared safely. So look at those last words again, that last sentence. What each truly thinks and feels and believes and fears and needs can be shared, and they can be shared safely. Do you have those type of connections in your life? That's where all the power happens, is when you develop relationships like that. Now, there are all kinds of problems with this. One of the problems is that Jesus taught that there's a spiritual enemy of our soul. And one of the things that he is committed to doing in your life is moving you toward isolation and disconnection. Because in isolation, all kinds of bad things start happening in your life. His commitment to you is to get you to isolate, to hurt you so much that you're like, this isn't worth it, I'm pulling back, I'm just going to do my life alone, I'll have these casual friendships in my life, but I'm not going to commit to this because it just hurts too much. And in isolation, you don't become what you were created to become, you don't thrive, and you will never, never heal from your past pain in isolation. Never. So his commitment is to move you to isolation. Yep, this isn't worth it, it's too hard, it's too difficult, you should just give up on it. He's committed to that. Because he knows how much it damages us. Think about this. What is the greatest punishment for a person in prison? They're already in prison. How do you punish somebody in prison? Well, you know what they do. They make them watch Minnesota Viking games forever, and they are in so much emotional pain. It's like, this is our year. Oh, no, it isn't. This is our year. It's so... Sorry. I haven't done that for a while, and Matt is a Viking fan. That's just for you. No, you know what it is. It's solitary confinement, right? You know, for years and years and years, I've heard about solitary confinement. I have never given any real thought to what it does to the prisoner other than it's just punishment. I always thought it was sort of like getting them away from everybody else so they can't hurt them. That is not what's happening. Frontline, you ever heard of Frontline, that PBS News program? They did a study on what the impact is on prisoners who are isolated in solitary confinement. Part of what they discovered is, in their study, 1/3 of the solitary inmates were actively psychotic or acutely suicidal. 1/3. Isolation is simply the most damaging thing you can do to your life. Our bodies were not, what did God say in Genesis? It's not good that we're alone. It is not good. We weren't made for it. Our bodies can't handle it. We were created for connection. So when when the New Testament came along, when the church was being formed in the New Testament, one of the things that is repeated is this concept of make sure you don't live in isolation. And it says things like this in Hebrews. It says, let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is near. We need each other. And here's what I want you to understand. I'm going to say repeatedly throughout this message today. You only grow, you only really change, and you only really heal in relationship with other people. You grow, you heal, you change in relationship with other people. So if you move towards isolation, you are damaging yourself. What we know this. We know that your future and what you experience in life is directly related to the quality of the relationships you have. Do you know that we know that how long you live is related to the connections that you have? Do you know we know that? We can prove that. We can prove whether you reach your goals, how much money you make, how your kids do in school, how much you trust people, how you cope with stress and failure, what kind of mood you're in, how much physical pain you not only experience, but how much you can endure. How and what you think so much of the quality of our life is rooted in the connections that we have. Your best life and your future is all rooted here. So you're going to hear me quote this guy today a lot. His name is Dr. Henry Cloud. I quote him a lot. He is my favorite author. He is a professional Christian counselor, and he has changed so much of my thinking over the years. He wrote a book called The Power of Others. In the book, he was talking about when he was a college student, learning about how to be a successful counselor. One day in class, his mind was really kind of blown when the professor said, do you want to know what really makes a great counseling relationship? Do you want to know how to help people? He said, it is first and foremost all about the relationship that the client has with the counselor. If you're able to develop great relationships with your clients, you'll heal them. And he's like, what? It's not about how smart I am. It's not about all these new tricks and tools that I learned. It's fundamentally about me being able to relate well to them. That's what's going to bring the most healing into his life. It took him a long time to realize the truth, and here's how he worded it. He said, that's the way we were created. We want to find somebody who will understand us, who will connect with us, because somewhere very deep within our DNA is the bias towards staying connected so that we can protect and support each other. Think about it. Our God is a Trinitarian God. He lives in relationship, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. One God in three forms. He lives in relationship. What do you think he did when he created us? He created us to only thrive in relationship. Then in the book, Dr. Cloud goes on to tell a time when he made the worst decision of his life. He, very aggressive in his business dealings, wanted to keep growing, had clinics and books and all these things going really well for him. He took this huge risk, and it was a complete failure. It was going to cost people a lot of money. It was just devastating to him. And if you've ever failed really, really, really big, you know, sometimes it can really spin you off in a real depression cycle, and he was getting depressed. And right at that moment, his phone rang, and it was before caller ID, and he's like, I don't want to answer the phone, but I'm a counselor, so I can't really ignore this. And so he picked up the phone, and it turned out to be his mentor in life. And he thought, great, here I am in the middle of the worst mistake I have ever made in my life, and Superman calls me. And that's how he looked at his mentor, as Superman. And so his mentor immediately sensed something was wrong. He got him to talk about it, and Dr. Cloud shared what he had just done, how bad he'd screwed up, what he had missed. Oh. And he said, and my mentor healed me with 5 words. My mentor said, well, we've all been there. He said, in a short time on that phone call with that man, nothing had changed about my circumstances. Nothing. But when I hung up that phone, I was ready to get back to work and solve the problems I had just created. That's the power of others. Your best life, and everything God wants you to be, is going to happen based on your ability to do this well. So some of you are sitting here still going, okay, that makes sense intellectually to me, but I still have to do it with people. And people keep hurting me. Right. So what we have to do, number 2, is this. We have to learn how to evaluate our relationships. We have to learn how to evaluate our relationships. Let me just be blunt as we start this point. The simple fact of the matter is, all of us probably, have people in our life that we should never talk to again. We have people in our life that we should not be close to, and we're close to them. Because we don't do this. We do not give any serious thought to evaluating the impact that the people around us are having on our lives. We do not think about this clearly or seriously enough. So one of the things that's really important about this, one of the things that I learned as I was prepping this message is that at any time in your life, you're always in one of these 4 boxes with people. You can be in no connection. You can be in bad connections. You can have fake connections. And then the one that changes your life is corner number 4. You can have these real connections. So let me show you what this means. Flip your notes over on the back. On the back, I put these 4 different corners. So this is where some of you are at today. Some of you are disconnected today. You have suffered so much pain that you live in isolation. Nobody knows the real you. Some of you have secrets that there isn't a person on the planet who knows. Some of you have fears that you've never told another human being. You live in isolation. And it's damaging you. Do you get that now? Solitary confinement is the most damaging thing you can do to a human being. And here you are. And usually when we do this, you know when we do this the most, right? Is when we've suffered trauma. We've really gotten hurt. And so what we do in our pain is we do the absolute worst thing we could possibly do. We isolate ourselves. Because we don't want to get hurt again. We isolate, we put ourselves in solitary confinement in our trauma and wonder why we don't get better. You grow and you heal and you change only in relationships. Your best life is in relationships. So if you go through trauma and you isolate yourself, you've just set yourself up for an unending season of pain until you change that. Now, because God wired us to be relational beings, we don't like to live in that isolation, so eventually what we start doing, and you see this all the time, how many times have you ever seen, specifically, it often happens to women, how many times have you ever seen a woman get out of an abusive relationship, and what kind of person do they go with next? Right, some of you know. They go right back into another abusive relationship. Very common pattern, we've all seen it. Because we're so wired for connection that many of us would rather be in bad connection than no connection. So those people who choose those abusive people would rather have an abuser than nobody, because isolation is so damaging to us, and so they do this. In bad connections, you're being harmed, and this is how to know if you're in a bad connection, okay? And I really want you to think about this, and right there is a spot where you can write down, it says corner number 2 on your notes. Matter of fact, let me read the definition here. It says, it's a pull towards a person who has the effect of making us feel bad, or not good enough in some way. Now, this connection will produce inside of you anxiety, fear, guilt, shame, bad feelings, or a sense of inferiority. So there's that list right there. And here's what I want you to think about today. Who has that effect on your life? And I want you to put their name next to it unless they're sitting next to you. Okay? If they are, then put my name. Put a pseudonym. Mickey Mouse, then they'll know, so don't do that. Who has this impact on you? Who, when you're around them, you feel more anxiety? Who, when you're around them, they make you more scared or guilty or full of shame? Who does this for you? Some of you, it's not even hard. Names are flashing in your mind right now. You just never stopped to actually evaluate the people that you're in relationship with currently. Now, some of you are like, well, why would anyone be in a bad connection? 2 reasons why we're in bad connections. Number 1, because we don't actually think about the fact that they're harming us. When was the last time you ever stopped to evaluate the relationships that you're in? And the second thing is, even bad connections, the reason why an abused woman goes into another abusive relationship, she's getting something, right? She's getting something. You are getting something from your bad connections. But it's sort of like being lost in the ocean in a raft. And you're dying of thirst, surrounded by water. You read stories in war of what people do in those situations. You know what they do, right? They drink the salt water. Because they're so desperate that they think it's water. And what they don't understand is by doing that, they are harming themselves far more than they're helping themselves. That's what we do. We choose bad connections over no connections. So whose names would you put down there? So then, there's a step above this. Corner number 3 is what we call pseudo-good connections, or the other label was fake connections. And this is like, let the good times roll. On your notes it says, relationships that make us feel good. However, they're all positive and no or little reality. Little or no feedback or correction. People are too afraid to damage the relationship. The two most common places to find fake connections are the bar and the church. You want to see fake connections, you go to those two places. You see a lot of positive, especially in the bar. A lot more positive in the bar. You're having fun, having good times, let the good times roll. But you really messed up your life, but nobody will tell you that, right? On the church side, it's typically the opposite. You may get a lot of truth and no grace. The good times don't roll. But the criticism does. So these are core number 3. They're fake relationships. They're not what you need to have. If I were to ask you, and again, ultimately, there's nothing wrong with having friends that you just have fun with. Can I be clear about that? There's nothing wrong with it. Some of you have great friends that when you're together, you just have a lot of fun. But there isn't the reality piece to it. There isn't the truth piece to it. There are things you see in their life that you know you should say something about and you never have. And they see stuff in you and they've never said anything. That's how you know it's a fake relationship. It's in this pseudo, I mean, it's a good thing. It's still nice to have some friends you can have fun with, but it's not the real connection that's going to change your life. The only way to get that is this last one. Corner number 4, these are true connections. And here's what you get in these again. Corner number 4, you get emotional support. You get wisdom and community. And this one is the most important line, I think, in my opinion. It's grace and truth. Because the only way you grow in life is when you get both. If all you get is constant truth, 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 here's the truth about you all the time, and you don't get the grace, then it wipes you out. And if all you get is the grace, 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 then all of your blind spots remain. It's the combination of the two, which, by the way, was personified in Jesus. He came full of grace and truth. He's the example. When we have corner 4 relationships and we get grace and truth, that's when we begin to grow and heal and change. You get this reality-based feedback. You get all of these positive things. So the question again is, some of you are sitting here going, all right, well, I've never really evaluated. Some of you have never evaluated the relationships that you're in. How do I really know if these people are corner 4 or one of the other corners? Well, here's another question, another way to ask it. How do you feel during and after the interaction with that person? Do you feel more valued when you're around them or diminished? Do you feel more accepted or condemned? Do you feel more authentic, like you can really be yourself? How many people do you have in your life where you can just be yourself? Or do you feel like you gotta be fake? Corner 4 relationships, the safest relationships where you're gonna grow and you're gonna heal and you're gonna change, are always gonna have the impact of making you feel valued and accepted and authentic. How many of those do you have? Now, what I want you to understand is that the Bible screams a constant message from beginning to end. And it's this: you are always being impacted by the people you let in your life. I love history, and there are history books in the Bible, some of you didn't know this. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, in the first part of the Bible, tell the story of the history of the nation of Israel. Fascinating history. I love history anyway, but this is really cool stuff. Mostly tells about the kings of Israel and what they did wrong. I wish it told more good stories, but the reality is if you read those books, you'll see they just screwed up constantly. But we can learn from other people's mistakes. But there are occasionally really, really good kings, and the impact they have on the nation is stunning. And the Bible is very clear about the leader determines the direction. Great leaders, even our country's history. Put a great leader in office and great things happen. Right? Put a bad leader in, watch out. Same thing in our lives. Who we allow around us. In the history of the nation of Israel, the king determined the direction. There's a fascinating story in 2 Chronicles about a king named Joash. Joash did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight throughout the lifetime of Jehoiada the priest. Jehoiada was the godly influence. He was the religious leader of the nation of Israel. And as long as he was alive, the young king did great things, and the nation prospered, and they followed God, and they experienced God's blessing in their nation. And then, so it's like this incredible, you get to see what I'm talking about, fourth corner relationship, it's right there. He gave this young king both grace and truth. And as long as he was alive, and he had this fourth corner relationship, not only did the king thrive, but the nation thrived. And then, unfortunately, after Jehoiada's death, this religious influence, this positive fourth corner relationship died. He didn't replace it with the right one. The leaders of Judah came and bowed before King Joash and persuaded him to listen to their advice. And all of a sudden, he had a different influence. He literally should have evaluated the impact of these people because they were bringing harm to him and harm to the nation. But he didn't do it, and the nation fell because of this. You are always, always, always being impacted by the people you let in. Always. Which is why it's imperative that we learn how to evaluate who we've let in, because they're going to be influencing us one way or the other. There's a great story Henry Cobb tells about one time a very famous heart surgeon came to him. And this guy professionally was at the top in America in this area of the specific type of heart surgery he did. World renowned. So his professional life was going great. His personal life was a complete disaster. He did not have fourth corner connections. He had a lot of people he partied with. He had those third corner ones so that he could escape from the meaninglessness of his life and job, and so he partied a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of the people he partied with were women, and a lot of those turned into affairs, and finally his wife caught him, and she was done. She had left him. His business partners were so upset at the chaos of his personal life and how it was affecting the business that they literally came to him and were threatening to throw him out of his own business, which happens a lot. Not because they aren't professionally good, but because their personal life creates so much drama that it just won't work anymore. And so he knew he needed to get some help, so he went to meet with Dr. Cloud, and he came in with a plan. Here's my plan. And he laid out his plan, everything he was going to do to change, so that he wasn't that man anymore. And he got done with the plan, and he looked at Dr. Cloud. He said, "What do you think of my plan?" And Dr. Cloud said, "Well, do you want the truth?" And he said, "Of course I do." He said, "Well, this plan that you've laid out will bring you right back to where you are right now." He said, "Because all of the emphasis in your plan is what you're going to do. You're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to change." He said, "It's sort of like a car that's run out of gas in the middle of nowhere, and the solution is that the car is going to fill itself up with gas." Is that how it works? I was a teenager. It doesn't work that way. Cars don't just automatically fill themselves up, right? They have to be acted upon by an outside force. Somebody, usually Dad, has to put gas in. They don't fill themselves. And so he started teaching him this. If your plan is all what you're going to do and you're going to do, you've already shown what you can do. And whenever you hit a point in your life where you don't have what you need, then the solution is not more of you. It's outside relationships. And so I helped him write a new plan that was dependent on others. 1 year later, that doctor came back in to see him. His marriage was restored. His personal life was restored. And here's what that doctor said 1 year later. He said, "The big problem with people like me is that we think we're gladiators. We can fight our way through anything. We'll just never give up. But when it comes to our needs and our vulnerabilities and our weaknesses, that's where the gladiator mentality falls short." And here's what he said: "We can't do it alone." Have you learned that yet? Because if you haven't, you want me to tell you what your future holds? You will be in pain. You can't do it alone. You grow, you heal, you change in relationships. And that's the only way this is going to happen. And it's in the right relationships, those fourth corner. Now so if I were to ask you, how many fourth corner relationships do you have in your life? This is where it gets complicated, because some of you are like, okay, get it. I need relationships. I'm only going to grow and heal and change relationships, and I need fourth corner ones. I don't need any more harmful ones. As a matter of fact, you need to diminish the harmful ones. You need to add the positive ones. What's the solution to that? How do I do this? Well, number 3, obviously it's about developing and pursuing fourth corner friendships. This is what we need to be more intentional about. We evaluate the relationships we're in. We diminish the impact of the people that are harming us. And we look to develop these fourth corner relationships. One time a counselor got a call from a woman that he was working with, and she was suicidal. So I got her on the phone, and she said, "This relationship stuff doesn't work. I'm done with it. It just doesn't work." He's like, "What happened?" She said, "Well, I sat down with my best friend, and I told her all that I'm going through about my depression and my struggles with my boyfriend, and she really came down on me for being depressed. She said, I shouldn't feel that way. And that if I was still having these problems, then I was just filled with too much negativity, and that I'm bringing everything down on myself." You have friends like that, by the way? You open up about your pain, and they condemn you for the pain that you're in? She was devastated. She's like, "This relationship stuff doesn't work." And he correctly pointed out, by the way, it's probably not the problem is relationships, it's who you're actually talking to. And she said, "What do you mean? This person's been my best friend my whole life." And she said, "Well, best friends are defined by being helpful. Was your friend helpful? Did she have a positive impact on your life? No. If you don't evaluate your relationships, that's what you get. That's what you get. A lot of you have people in your life that you keep reaching out to, and they keep harming you. Time to change. So how do you do this? Well, here's my best shot at this. There's no way to do this quickly. The first thing is you have to spend time with the right people. Which of course begs the question, well, who are the right people? They're the people that have that positive impact on your life, that when you leave, you feel better about yourself, not worse about yourself. And this just requires taking some more risks. You gotta have people over. You gotta sign up to serve. You got to join groups where you're going to be around people, and then in those experiences and those risks, you encounter people that like you kind of click with, and then you do not then pour out your heart to them. Don't do this quickly. The next step is you've got to evaluate their trustworthiness. Are they really the type of person you should be opening up to? And here's my key question on this one while you're writing this. Well, I'll wait till you write this down. You evaluate their trustworthiness. Here's what I want to ask you to consider. Have you ever trusted the wrong person in your life? Ever done that? How did you feel after trusting the wrong person? Isn't it one of the deepest pains you can experience in life? You trust the wrong person, they use what you've just given them against you. I mean, I don't know of too many things more painful than betrayal like that. Here's my follow-up question, and this may be just as important. What did you miss? What did you miss? You trusted someone you shouldn't have, and they used it against you. What did you miss? If you don't ever stop to pull back from that and evaluate, then guess what you're going to get to do again? Repeat your mistake. Why did you trust someone that turned out to be untrustworthy? Were there red flags you were ignoring? Were there things you saw that you just didn't pay attention to? Were there things you needed to learn that you've now learned? You've got to learn from that. You've got to take your time, show some discernment. Again, this goes back to evaluating their impact on your life. Evaluate their trustworthiness. Are they really someone you should be trusting with? Because maybe the scariest thing in all of humanity is this. You've got to risk vulnerability with them. If they're really the right person, you spend time with them, you get to know them, you see that they're trustworthy, then the hardest step of all for human beings is this one, where you just are like, you talk to them about what's really going on inside. This is how you move out of solitary confinement. It's this step. So if you never do this step, you stay in solitary confinement for the rest of your life. And all the damage that comes from that, you get to experience. You only get out of solitary confinement with this step. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Because it really implies two things. You risk the truth about yourself. Like I said earlier, some of you have secrets about yourself that no other human being on earth knows about. There isn't anybody who knows. and it's damaging you. The enemy of your soul is using that against you constantly, whether you're aware of it or not. I love what Dr. Claude said once. He said, there's no such thing as a self-made man or a woman. Every great leader is opened up to someone who can meet a need in their life, whatever that need might have been. He said, in 25 years, I've been working with the most high-powered CEOs and other top performers across the country. He said, there's one characteristic that stands out. You want to know what makes them so great? He said, people who accomplish the most, thrive the most, overcome the most, are not afraid to say, I need help. Oh, it's tremendous vulnerability, isn't it? Some of you don't say that. You need help, you just don't say it. Because it's a big risk. But this is where we grow and we heal and we change when we're in the right relationships with corner for people and we're vulnerable about ourselves. And if you don't have anyone, what I say all the time is there's a counselor that meets at Hidden Valley. Her name is Marsha Brew. Call the church, set up an appointment, start to talk and risk vulnerability. But the only way that helps, by the way, is if you tell the truth about yourself. Studies about how many times people lie to their counselor are ridiculous. You're paying money to lie to somebody. You can do that for free. You don't need to pay money to lie. It only works when you develop that relationship and you risk vulnerability. And then the other part of this, which we'll get into this series a lot, okay? You tell the truth about the other person. It's a two-way street. Do not go home and just do this, okay? Wait till we learn the skills and talk about it in this series about how to do that well. Brian said, I gotta tell the truth about you. Well, let me tell you, okay? You're gonna do it wrong. Just be patient. We'll learn those skills. It's crucial, though. This is where the vulnerability happens. This is where the life change happens. So if you're wondering what it looks like in a formula, you spend time with the right people, you evaluate their trustworthiness, you see their trustworthiness, you risk vulnerability, and then you get into this fourth corner relationship where your whole life gets changed. I am incredibly passionate about this series because my whole life has been changed by fourth corner people. If you've listened to me talk at all when I've done relationship series, I've been very honest about what happened to me in 2005, but there's more to the story. So I'll tell you the first part. Some of you have heard this before, so be patient. There's a second part that I don't think I've ever shared. In 2005, I got some criticism that I was an arrogant man. Stunning, right? I mean, whoa, Brian, I've never thought of you that way. So I didn't know if it was true, and so I wrote a bunch of my friends and said, would you give me some feedback on this? Here's the feedback I received, that I'm arrogant. Do I come across that way? Would you give me your honest feedback? And I sent this off sincerely wanting to know, but internally expecting the response to be, oh, Brian, how silly. Of course you're not arrogant. I can't imagine anyone saying this to you. And almost everyone responded that way, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself till the last one came in. And the last one was a fourth corner friendship. I've been a friendship for a long time, and that person risked vulnerability with me. I asked. And they sent me a multi-page letter. And in there they said that they have found me to be flippant, arrogant, and dismissive. That's not what I was expecting. That fourth corner friend took a huge risk that day. I was deeply hurt, but you know the Proverbs say that the wounds from a friend can be trusted. So it spent a lot of time processing that, and then came to the realization that this person was telling me the truth. I needed to hear that. That I was flippant and arrogant and dismissive. And I really made it my goal from that, after I'd processed and accepted it, to try and change those things about me. I didn't want people to think that I was flippant when it came to their opinions or dismissive, that my way was the only way. I didn't want to be arrogant. Sure didn't want to be arrogant. I really began to sincerely try to change, and those comments from that fourth corner friend began to change my life. But years and years later, I went back and reread that letter, and there was something in there that I had missed at the time. Back in 2005, my friend wrote me and said, as far as coming across as arrogant, I think that's part of your humor. A lot of times you say things and carry on with them just to get a rise out of someone, and the more they get upset, the harder you push. Not everyone, and I'd say most people, don't appreciate that kind of humor. I didn't catch that in 2005. I was a little kind of overwhelmed by the whole flippant, arrogant, dismissive quote. and missed that. Now, if you know my story, you know why that quote is now significant in my life. I was raised in a home, and I've talked honestly about this, where it was not a safe place. I've told before, I hated sitting next to my dad at the dinner table because I never knew when I was going to get hit for no reason at all. And it was always across the face. And it was devastating as a kid. It was not a safe environment to be raised in, and so what you do when you're suffering childhood trauma is you cope the best you can. Some turn to drugs and alcohol, some become rebellious. I didn't. I did two things. I learned how to close off emotions. It's not like you do this as an 8-year-old. I think I'm going to shut down all emotional expression. I didn't know I was doing it. It was the only way you could cope with it. It's the only way you survive childhood trauma, is to do things like this. And so I did. I shut off my ability to feel pain. The problem is you don't get to pick which emotions you shut off. If you shut off your ability to really feel pain and hurt, you shut off all of them. I didn't know I'd done it, but I did it. And then the second thing I did is I developed a sense of humor, because I learned young, if you can keep your dad laughing, he won't hurt you. And so I developed a sense of humor to cope with the pain that I was experiencing. And then I brought that same tactic into adulthood. If you hurt me, then I would unleash my sense of humor, like this email, on you. I would ridicule you. Like they said, push to the point where you were hurt, and then you would shut up. Because I didn't have the ability to say, that really hurts me, don't say that. I would use my humor to stop. My friend tried to tell me that in 2005. It wasn't until January of 2016 that same friend, 11 years later, finally got me to understand this. Finally, I understood that my humor oftentimes has mixed motives. It's about hurting people who hurt me and protecting myself. Since I didn't know what my motives were at the time, and I couldn't think of it. Am I about to say this joke because I want to hurt them, because I don't agree with them, or is it just funny? I don't know. I stopped telling jokes and stopped trying to be funny. And what I didn't realize, of course, that I was doing at that time is I was taking down this piece that had protected me since childhood from the pain that I was experiencing. And April of 2016, because of that decision, April of 2016, all the pain that I'd shut out since I was a child finally broke through. And for the first time since I was a little child, I began to feel again. I didn't know you could feel happiness. I didn't know you could feel it. I didn't know you could feel contentment. I didn't know you could feel joy or love. I didn't know you could feel these things. And all of a sudden, my life began to change. I wonder, I believe in God's timing. I know everything happens in His perfect way, but my fourth corner friend was trying to tell me that back in 2005. It's terrifying to me to realize how close I came to living my whole life without feeling it and not even being aware of it. So when I talk to you about you heal and change and grow in fourth corner relationships, the only reason I had the opportunity to heal from horrific pain from my childhood is because of a fourth corner friend. The only reason I have the opportunity to grow and become the man God created me to be is because of a fourth corner friend. And the only reason that people tell me they see me changing right now is because of a fourth corner friend. So evaluate your own life. How many of you have settled for corner number 2 friends? And it's very appropriate to call them number 2 friends. They're number 2. They harm you. They harm you. How many people do you have in your life right now that are harming you and you just won't look at it honestly? You've got to diminish their impact. You've got to reduce the amount of time you're spending with them. And if you don't have fourth corner friends, the first thing I would say to you today is to pray to God, who created you to be in a relationship anyway, okay? It was His idea. And say, God, would you please begin to bring into my life these kind of people? Start with God, and you're going to have to take some risks. You're going to do something different that you're not doing now. How are you going to get around other people? Because it's in those relationships that you will grow and heal and change. Now, if you're just exploring your faith with us here or just watching online exploring, we say it all the time, it's all about relationships. Now maybe you get a better picture of what I mean when I say that. Do you get it? It's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. And the primary relationship is a relationship with God, who will always give you grace and truth. Jesus was full of grace and truth when he came. It starts with truth. Jesus came to say, oh, here's the truth about you. He told us the truth about us. We think we're okay because we've done some religious things in our life. We've done these religious ceremonies. We're okay with God. We'll be all right when we die. Everything will be okay. We've been good people. And Jesus came and said, you want to be with my Father, be perfect. That's the truth. And if you can't be perfect, you can't be with God. Which made everybody go, then who has a shot? And the answer, nobody. Nobody has a shot on their own. And then he said, oh, by the way, I've come with grace too. All the things you've done that are wrong, I'm going to pay for all of them. Every single thing. And then he died on the cross for us. And then said, if you will risk vulnerability with me, and you will say to Jesus, I need you. I need you. Then you'll get him. And you'll be forgiven. And you'll be put in his family. And all these unbelievable experiences of grace will be yours. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Maybe this is the next step for you spiritually, is to let Jesus Christ give you this incredible gift. You acknowledge the truth, you ask for grace, you tell him you need him, and you get him. And you can say something like this in your heart to him. Say, Jesus, if the truth is that I have to be perfect, I have no shot at that. That's the truth about me. But I've heard that you died on a cross to pay, and you rose again, so please. Today I'm telling you I need you. Please forgive me. Show me your grace. Forgive me for what I've done. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks so much for coming. I want to encourage you on the way out to take a look at that clipboard if there are things you want to sign up for. We had an opportunity to really help some starving kids around the world, and we'd love to have your help with that. So take a look at that on the way out, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.